Has a handball, still a chance, is it a goal? It is! He's got the big goal! He's got the premiership! Little crossover, step back, wide open, and it's good! Not much help. Oh, he doesn't need any help! How about that?
This is the World of Sport.
Welcome to the football edition of the World of Sport podcast, brought to you by Pizza Strider and Bar in North Dandenong. I'm Jimmy, and with me as always is Pete, and a huge week in terms of talking points and stories and plot lines for the season, and maybe even the eventual champions have been crowned already, maybe. But Pete, welcome to the show. Well, I know you're a Liverpool fan, so I'll ask a question I already know the answer to. What was your favourite moment of the weekend?
Hey mate, how's it going? Yeah, straight into it, I guess. James Milner slotting home a 95th minute penalty is pretty hard to beat. But then, I caught the tail end of Man City losing to Wolves as well, so that was quite extraordinary.
Yeah. Let's just kick into a massive talking point in London, because Spurs are from London, but Spurs conceding 10 goals in 2 games. Granted, one is Bayern Munich, so, you can kind of understand losing to Bayern Munich. But, man, 7-2 at home to Bayern Munich and then 3-0 away at Brighton. It's got to be, the worst 4 or 5 days for Spurs and Mauricio Pochettino.
Yeah, exactly. Where do you start? They were European finalists last year in the Champions League, and now they've gone 7-2 against Bayern. And then you follow that up, you look to get a bit of confidence back, among the players, among the fans, and they lose 3-0 at Brighton, which is just not the result they needed at all. There's been rumours, a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, but at the end of the day, it's on the pitch where, games are won and lost. So they haven't been at their best recently, and sitting 9th on the table at the minute, behind teams like, no disrespect, but Crystal Palace, Burnley, West Ham, after 8 games, that's not where they wanted to be at all.
Yeah, and their form has really dipped since the new year of 2019. They've had some really tough losses against, winnable opposition. So maybe the form they're in currently has been foreshadowed from the second half of last season. But, making a Champions League final will always sugarcoat, if you will, and maybe even blindside a lot of fans to what's actually been happening at their club for the last, 9 months, if around that time, because it's been poor since about Feb.
Yeah, obviously there's been a lot of talk about a lack of signings. Obviously they had Ndombele, he's done really well since he's come in, but Ryan Sessegnon yet to feature. Christian Eriksen, obviously his future going the other way. Even Pochettino himself, and that's not what you want, as a club at all. I'm sure the fans just really want to get all the futures resolved. Even the likes of Jan Vertonghen and Toby Alderweireld, I think they're in the last year of their contracts. So it could be a mass exodus at Spurs if this keeps on happening. But yeah, you mentioned their form. I think they've lost more away games in the Premier League than any Premier League team in 2019, which is just ridiculous. So it's not a good time for Spurs at all.
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that there might be a mass exodus, and I tend to agree with you with that. But I think it wouldn't necessarily be the worst thing for the club. You see successful clubs, they have a breath of fresh air with new signings and continually changing and evolving over time. Spurs have been very stagnant for, the last couple, or maybe gone back 3, 4, 5 seasons now. So I think maybe the lack of new signings and fresh faces and new ideas has slowly started to catch up with them. And it's one thing having stability and having a stable core is important, but also bringing in fresh faces is really important as well. To Because I think it, I know the saying success stales a club, and Tottenham haven't really had much success, but they've been a top four team for the last few seasons now. Made a Champions League final, which they uh, were the better team in, but still ended up losing, which is irrelevant if they were the better team. But yeah, I just think that having an overhaul could end up being really positive for the future of their club as they get fresh faces, younger faces, different experience coming in, and you don't just have the same old continuing to show up at training and game days.
Yeah, I think you're right. Absolutely right. Even given that last result, 3-0 Brighton, that probably just unthinkable before the season started, to ship that many goals against, a team that's been in the bottom half in recent seasons. But, I keep on saying it, and I'm going to keep on saying it, that it really is early days yet. 30 games to go in the league yet. So there's a long way yet, and they might, they might turn it around. I think they just need a bit of confidence, and it's probably a good time to have this international break now, where the players can go away, and join up with their countries, and Spurs return with a home game against Watford, which you couldn't ask for any more at all. Watford obviously haven't won a game this season, and Spurs away form has been ridiculously bad. So home to Watford is the absolutely perfect game for them now to show, is this going to affect their season? Are they going to have a really bad season, or can they turn it around? I think anyway.
I think even more concerning for as Spurs fans, I'm not one, but if I was a Spurs fan, it is the manner as well. The last 180 minutes of football to capitulate at home against Bayern, to just almost roll over and say, have your way with me, and then to come to Burnley and just look, just like they had no ideas going forward. It almost reminds me of watching Manchester United at the moment. Their only real chances came from slow build up and really meticulously unpicking the Brighton defense. But I mean, they just look bereft of ideas, bereft of confidence, as if none of them really wanted to be out there. Like they knew something's up at the club, like something big's about to go down. Whether that's Pochettino just walking out, or the likes of Ericsson and Kane, or whoever that won out come January or the end of the season.
Yeah, well, I think Pochettino's quite loyal. I don't think he's going to step away, but it could be the other way about, that he's forced out of the club. And yeah, you could be right if he goes. I mean, Madrid are after him. Man United are after him, reportedly anyway. So I think he could, as some managers often do, take, his best players with him. So it could be the likes of Keane going and Ericsson going, but we'll wait and see what happens. But I think Brighton obviously deserve huge credit for the way they approach the game, and obviously Aaron Connolly, 19 years old, his first start for Brighton, and he scored a brace against Spurs. The first Irish teenager to score two in a Premier League game since Robbie Keane. So he's got big shoes to fill, but he's doing well so far, and that earned him a call into the Republic of Ireland senior squad from the under-21. So yeah, take nothing away from Brighton, but worrying times for Spurs.
Oh, absolutely. Brighton fans would be just over the moon. Their team is playing good football and it's yielding results like 3-0 against a Champions League side at the moment. So, I mean, the streets of Brighton are probably rioting at the moment in happiness. Probably, I don't know. I live in Australia. But we'll move on to the next game, and similar to Tottenham, a bit of strife for another big club in the Premier League, as Burnley took down Everton and condemned them to being in the relegation zone eight games into the season.
Yeah, and just like Spurs, I think Everton will be just, I can't believe that they're there. They won't know how it's happened at all. And Marco Silva, just like Pochettino, was under huge pressure already. Um, but I think Everton's problems can be pinpointed down to, well, not all of their problems, but they've conceded a lot of goals from set pieces. I think it's the most goals from set pieces since last season, and also they've had the most red cards since the start of last season. So it's two unwanted stats that they've got. And yeah, as you say, they're 18th in the Premier League right now, 7 points from 8 games. I mean, 5 losses. It's not looking good for them. I think you'd be forgiven for thinking that it would be the other way about. Burnley, it would be Everton in 7th and Burnley in 18th, but it's the other way about, and for whatever reason.
It'll be interesting to see where Everton do end up at the end of the season, given the amount of money they spent, the likes of Moise Keane coming in, Iwobi. So, there's a lot of pressure on Silva just because of the amount of money they spent in the recent transfer window. So, and Everton, I think, given how Spurs, United, and Chelsea are doing, I think a lot of fans could be forgiven for really believing that this was their year to nab a Champions League squad. So I think that'll compound the disappointment. Is given their Champions League rivals, if you will, other teams competing for Champions League, that this was potentially their best year in a long time to finish fourth or maybe even sneak into third.
Yeah, spot on. And we mentioned Spurs already, and even Man United just don't seem to want those spots outside the top two. I think top two is pretty set in stone right now. It might change between those two over the season. I'd say it most definitely will, but the rest of the teams below them, maybe third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. You really would have thought Everton would be in there. Definitely Spurs. Certainly not Palace anyway, or the likes of Burnley who are sitting in seventh. But as you say, yeah, huge amount of money spent on Iwobi, Keane, and they just haven't really clicked. So that needs to change pretty fast for Everton.
Yeah, exactly. On the other side of that game, Burnley would be extremely happy. I mean, granted, a red card couldn't have happened to a nicer bloke in Seamus Coleman as well, but irrelevant. Burnley would be over the moon to come away with 3 points against a. I mean, Everton are in the relegation zone, but they're still a fantastic squad.
Yeah, I think they just need to click. But yeah, as you mentioned, Burnley unbeaten in 4 league games now. They're flying high, 12 points from 8 games. Pretty consistent. I mean, they'll be happy with a 1-0 win. I think 3 points is 3 points for them right now. So yeah, Sean Dyche will definitely be happy with the results they've had in recent games.
And Daesh is probably he's done really well. He's adapted his. I know he plays a 4-4-2 typically, but he's done really well to adapt the 4-4-2 relative to who they're playing. So we saw with a couple of their recent games, they were pressing up higher, particularly against Arsenal. They used a pressing 4-4-2, whereas I think against Liverpool, they sat a lot deeper. So, I mean, Dasha's tactically um, being able to adapt to the team that he's playing up against, even though it's just a stock standard 4-4-2. He's doing really well to get the most out of his team at the moment.
Yeah, and he's got some really good players in there as well. He likes Dwight McNeil, Goodmanson, even Barnes. We've mentioned him before. Woods, goal scorer, and again a really strong defense. So yeah, Dyche is a hero over there in Burnley.
Mm.
Obviously red card for Everton didn't help, but I mean, sometimes 10 men play a lot better than 11 men, and it's sometimes harder to play against them. But they obviously controlled the game well, and I'm sure they're absolutely thrilled with 3 points.
I think the biggest factor for Burnley is having Tarkowski and me at the center of their defense. I think that's a really solid partnership, which a lot of Premier League teams would be envious of at the moment, particularly United or even Manchester City at the moment. They can't seem to have to get a solid back two or three.
Absolutely, yeah, spot on.
Speaking of City and their championship rivals, Liverpool snuck away from Anfield with 3 points against a red hot Leicester in potentially controversial circumstances. Depending on what glasses you put on to view the incident. I mean, last week we said that Liverpool were lucky to come away with 3 points against. They played Sheffield. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
A keeping error gifted them 3 points against a Sheffield team that had a lot of chances to get 3 points themselves. But this week, I think you would have been disappointed if Liverpool didn't come away with 3 points. So I think the end result justifies Liverpool's dominance in the game, but still, the Mane incident is still controversial. Leicester did well despite the plethora of chances Liverpool created for themselves to stay in the game. I mean, Schmeichel was huge in the goals, had a massive game, and then Madison pipped one that Adrian probably is disappointed he didn't keep out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
how'd you end up seeing? How'd you see the penalty?
I mean, there was a lot of talk about it, obviously, and whatever side you sit on. But for me, it was a penalty. I mean, if there's contact in the box, then the striker's going to go down. I think you just have to be careful. I think Mark Albright, who made the tackle, I think he knew there was contact in there, and I mean, Manny did make a lot of it, but what 95th minute at home when you're one each, you're going to go down. And I can see why the ref gave it. Yeah, I think he's been touched. So yeah, for me it was a penalty, and Milner was luckily we have him there because he's just the epitome of composure. Like I mean, I don't know how his nerves were there, but he just slotted it home. Against he's Michael. He was good all game.
Mm. Um, I saw the incident maybe just a little bit different to you. I don't think anyone's disagreeing that there was contact. It just seemed a bit funny the contact and then the way Mane went down.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
I'm not doubting that it was a penalty or shouldn't have been a penalty. I'm just because obviously I didn't feel the contact. Mane might have felt the contact a lot stronger than what it looks, but it didn't look like the contact was enough to impede his run because the contact came from behind into his calf as he's running away from the contact. So the contact isn't impeding on his running. It isn't tripping him or getting in the way. He doesn't have to go round or anything. And it was fairly minimal from my view from behind him. So he's not really going to get off balance from that or miss the chance that he's doing. So I thought he made a lot of it. I understand why the ref gave the penalty, and there is the contact there to give the penalty. And I'm not saying that he shouldn't have given the penalty. I just think that I probably, looking back on it, knowing everything that I know, probably wouldn't have given it in the first place, but I wouldn't have taken it away from the referee having made that decision, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, there was definite delay from when he was touched to when he went down, and it was a bit theatrical, to say the least. But we see it so often in the Premier League and abroad as well that players go down in the slightest of touches, whether it's inside or outside the box. But yeah, the ref's given it. I mean, I'm sure Leicester are unhappy, but I'm sure they can be happy definitely with how they performed. They've got a great side, great manager, and they'll definitely do well this season. They're so consistent. They've been unlucky a few times this season, but for me, just a massive, massive win for Liverpool, especially obviously it was before Man City's result, but after the weekend, 8 points clear at the top of the table, 8 wins from 8. I mean, that's just absolutely huge at this stage of the season.
Yeah, 100%. It's not really too much more to analyse about the game. I mean, Liverpool were dominant for much of the game, and Leicester just hung in there, snatched a goal, and you thought that the game would finish there, and then the penalty pretty much the story of the entire game. Is there anything else you wanted to say about that, or shall we move to Aston Villa Norwich?
Yeah, let's go on to Villa Norwich. Just happy that Liverpool have the 3 points.
And as you should be. Big win given how the relegation scrap is sort of panning out now for Aston Villa away at home to Norwich, who, a couple of weeks ago took down Man City. And as we said on last week, or you said on last week's podcast, we were all thinking, here we go, we've got a team here. Norwich has come to the EPL to play. They could end up being a fairly decent top 10 side that take down a few big names, but injuries have really cost them, and now they find themselves in a relegation dogfight, and losing 5-1 at home to Villa couldn't have gone much worse for the Canaries.
Yeah, just about to say. I mean, they're missing some huge players in there, especially in midfield. But I mean, you just don't get that chance to fight in the Premier League without whenever you're missing players. You have to recover and respond to that. But I don't like to say it, but maybe they're being found out already. Norwich, just 2 wins now. Obviously, one was against City, that was huge. But now 6 losses out of 8 games. It seems it's not looking good for them, and they started, conceding even more goals. They're conceded the most goals in the league this season, even more than Watford, who haven't actually won a game. So maybe a bit worrying for them, but if they get those key players back, then they might bounce back and get a bit of confidence. But for Villa, on the other hand, absolutely huge for them and huge for Wesley up front too. Should have had a hat trick, missed the penalty after scoring twice, but it's a lot of confidence for someone like that. His first season in the Premier League, and goals is all they need really, and he's done that for them.
Yeah, it was a fascinating game stat wise as well. I mean, one shot separated the two teams. 21 shots for the Canaries and 22 shots for Aston Villa. Norwich had more corners, more possession. Um, Villa obviously killed them with shots on target. It was just, it's fascinating to see the stats being so even and yet the scoreline so one-sided. And you just gotta tip your hat to Villa. We've been saying for weeks now that there's no such thing as an honourable loss in the Premier League. Because at the end of the day, you need points to survive. No one's going to keep you up on honourable losses or how well you played. So to turn all those excellent performances against better teams or more established teams in the Premier League, to turn that around, all those disappointments into a big 5-1 win, just speaks volumes for the Villa team, and for the I don't know how to describe it, but just the emotion, the how the boys would be training and how they'd be getting around each other. I'm trying to think of the word. If you can jump in, if you can think of it, but just the camaraderie would be huge. The morale, there we go. The morale would be good, would be quite high despite all those losses, and that's evident with a big 5-1 win.
Yeah, absolutely. And the main thing is they're still scoring goals. They're the highest goal scorers in the bottom half of the league right now. And also, I think they've been pretty unlucky with some of the results. At Palace, it was just a goal in it. Even against Spurs, they were very good at the start of the season. Bournemouth, another just one goal in it, and Arsenal, obviously, if we remember that game, probably deserved a lot more than a 3-2 loss. So yeah, they're going well, and I think it is just about confidence, especially for newly promoted sides. And Norwich are obviously suffering a bit at the minute, but that doesn't mean Villa should be as well. So I think they're going well. They've got some really talented players in there. And yeah, massive to just keep on winning, to just keep on picking up results here and there. Yeah, they're going to lose games. It's going to be tough against the likes of Man City and Liverpool, who they've actually got, in the next coming weeks. So if they keep on beating teams around them, then it's gonna be a good season for them.
And from one relegation scrap to potentially another with Watford and Sheffield United facing off and drawing. And you probably got to feel sorry for Watford. They missed some unmissable chances is probably the best way to put it. I mean, Gray in the 10th minute had a chance. It's probably easier to score than it is to miss. And somehow he's just put it right over the bar from 6 yards out. And that's probably sums up their entire 90 minutes, just almost, but not enough. And you'd think they'd be disappointed not to come away with their first win of the season, but the signs are there that they're creating those clear-cut chances to help them get out of the relegation zone.
Yeah, I think, those chances, I think that's just what happens whenever you're down. When you're down, and you're really at the bottom of the table, and it doesn't look good. But how you turn that around is, well, they'll be happy with the point, I'm sure, but, as you mentioned, it could have been a lot more than that. And to get that first one of the season would be huge for them. Obviously, they've had problems with their managers this season. But even Sheffield United, I think they might even be disappointed as well. They had, 60 percent plus possession in that game. And just, I think they might even be disappointed, especially with Watford bottom of the league. I think Sheffield might be disappointed just to take a point, but it seems like clean sheets are their thing. We've saw a lot of it with like the likes of Burnley in the past, who really don't concede many goals. Crystal Palace and Sheffield United are absolutely flying in that department. They just do not seem to concede goals at all. So yeah, I mean 0-0, just a pretty disappointing game for both sides, I'd say.
Agree 100%. Let's go to the West Ham Crystal Palace game, and West Ham looked all value for 3 points when Haller put them in front the 54th minute. But Crystal Palace, in typical Crystal Palace fashion, snuck away with 3 points away from home. Do you reckon they should just request every game away from home next season and see if they can push for the championship?
Yeah, I'm sure they'd be really happy with that. That was some turnaround, to be fair to them, and now they're sixth in the league right now, which I don't think anybody saw that at all. But it's just, it's remarkable. They've scored 8 and they've conceded 8, so goal difference at the minute is 0. Obviously they don't score many, but when they do, it seems to win them games. But I think it's just West Ham fans have seen something like this far too often. They have a chance to really push in the league whenever no one else wants to, and they just throw it away, in front of their home fans. So I think they'll be disappointed with that.
Yeah, they also missed some big chances to really put the game away when Crystal Palace seemingly were down and out of the game. But you got to have a full 90-minute performance in the Premier League to take home 3 points, and 60 minutes just isn't enough against anyone, let alone a Crystal Palace away from home. So yeah, I think West Ham will be bitterly disappointed that they didn't take all their big chances when they were had the supremacy in the game.
Yeah, definitely disappointed. But I mean, the goal they scored was different class. It was an absolutely beautiful team goal, and it was put away by Sebastian Haller, who's, for me, a really top striker, and he's going to score some huge goals for them this season. He already has, but he's got great feet for a big guy, and it's what they've been missing for so long now. And I think he's definitely knows where the net is, and he's definitely going to be huge for them going forward this season.
You mean Andy Carroll isn't the big man that they have been looking for?
Absolutely not.
Arsenal Bournemouth 1-0, solid win, and the man that I'll take full credit or full blame for having to go at David Luiz, but for all his mistakes that he's made in his career, he's finally put a foot right and got Arsenal 3 points.
I mean, he probably owed them that much. Let's be honest. He probably still owes them a lot from his mistakes this season. But yeah, Arsenal. I mean, they weren't entirely convincing, but maybe a Europa League hangover from Thursday night. Obviously they've rested a couple of their players, but it still takes a bit out of you. Playing Thursday and then playing Sunday, so yeah, they'll be definitely happy. Bournemouth are a good side, obviously going well this season, as they always do. But I think they've struggled massively against top six sides, or so-called top six sides, in the past couple of seasons. So I think it was always going to be Arsenal's game to win, and thankfully Louise was there to do that.
I think as you said, the hangover probably was in full effect. So getting a goal in the first 10 minutes was probably, well, evidently it was crucial to them holding on to the 3 points. But I think the game would have been a lot different the longer it stayed 0-0, or if Bournemouth
Hmm.
could have, snuck a counter attack or an early goal against the run of play. Because a team like Arsenal in a situation like that's going to kind of throw what they can at the start to kill the game off so they don't have to put too much effort in. Um, so, yeah, the one goal at the start of the game proved vital for Arsenal. Now they find themselves in third place, and what is it, like 1 point behind City now? I mean, if you're an Arsenal fan, given all the stress and anxiety you've probably had since the transfer window, you spent 70 odd million on Pepe with your defense. uh, I'm not really sure you can call it a defense, but with a couple players down back, I think they would have had lots of sleepless nights. So now you find yourself 1 point behind City and well and truly in a Champions League spot. I think you'd take that every day of the week, given everything that's happened at Arsenal.
Yeah, absolutely spot on. I mean, I can't even believe they're 1 point behind City, but I mean, you look at the results; they've only lost one game this season, and that was against Liverpool, who are obviously 100% record at the start of the season.
Calm down.
So Arsenal fans, yeah, should be very happy. Considering, yeah, as you say, that defense. And they have honestly haven't conceded that many goals. I think scoring goals seems to be more of a problem. But yeah, I think they'll just more than happy to just keep on picking up points, and especially 3 points at home against Bournemouth. Yeah, absolutely delighted, I'm sure.
As you say, they haven't conceded an awful lot of goals. It could be that Emery is accounting for their defensive frailties and is opting for maybe not having his fullbacks, bomb down and support the attack, or having his CDM just drop a little deeper and not support the attack as well. So, you know, at the end of the day, they're conceding to mistakes and not defensive form, like cracks in the defensive formation. So yeah, it's hard to know, but it could be that Emery's just accounting for that defensive frailty with a bit of more of a defensive approach and letting the top five or six, or probably five, use their talent. I mean, you got Aubameyang, who's just a freak of nature. Pepe got futsal feet, love his work, still finding his feet. No pun intended, but um, and Danny Ceballos is doing great work, and so you have front five. They have other players as well, but you have a front five that are supremely talented and can create and find goals on their own. So it could be this dichotomy. We'll drop the other six deep, make sure we don't concede goals, and hope that our top five can create the goals for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, they're pretty clever the way they go about handling games, whether it be, attacking a team here or there, or, picking up a cheap foul here or there. I think they are cunning the way they go about it. But as I say, yeah, as you mentioned, third in the table after 8 games, they'll be more than happy with that, 100%.
Unhappy though is the team that they trail by a single point, and I mean, you and I, especially me, because I predicted Wolves to finish fifth or sixth, or who knows what I predicted. It's all wrong already. Um, but Wolves came to play, and they just, it wasn't even. it wasn't really that close, was it? I mean, Wolves created three clear-cut chances in the first half, and you probably thought, well, City's dodged a bullet here. They're going to come out in the second half and just put the sword to Wolves, but the complete the complete opposite happened, and Wolves ended up running out pretty comfortable 2-0 winners, which is, I don't think I would have thought I would say that against Man City at the start of the season, that any team would run out comfortable 2-0 winners.
Yeah, especially at the Etihad as well. But I mean, I think it's just been a crazy season so far already, and it just got a little crazier against Man City with Wolves. That was only their second win of the season, which says it all. They've obviously had a lot of games to play, in Europe and in the league and cups and things like that. But as you say, nobody saw that coming at all, and especially not Adama Traore, who scored 2 goals against City away from home. City obviously renowned for not conceding goals, especially at home, and for not losing home and away under Guardiola. But huge shock, huge result for City and for Liverpool and for Wolves. Obviously, can't forget about them. Obviously picking up a bit of confidence, but just huge for them. And I think a lot of it can be pinpointed down to Man City's defense, who just weren't at it at all.
All right, we'll split up the analysis of where they are on the table. So we'll start with Wolves, and we'll get to City a bit after. Do you reckon? Well, we thought last week could be the kickstart of their season needed, but do you reckon after this 2-0 win, Nuno Santo is probably licking his lips at what his team could be and where they could finish in the season? I mean, I think they're 11th at the moment, but we've seen them. They've drawn 4, they've won 2 now. I reckon that given how badly United, Spurs, and Chelsea have started, although Chelsea's picked it up and we'll get that in a bit, I reckon they're still, yeah, they're 11th on 10 points. I reckon they're still very much in the hunt for that 4th place. I mean, that's a stretch, but potentially they have the potential to do it. But definitely top 7 now.
I think you have to be cautious first and foremost, because obviously we talked about what Norwich did against Man City, and look at them now. So obviously a little bit of warning there, but I mean, if you beat City 2-0 away from home, then I mean, it's surely you can beat anyone anywhere really. That's the way it should work. But if anything's going by this season, then it's not how it's going to happen. But yeah, they really do have a lot of talented players in there. But again, they're playing in Europe as well, so they have to maybe think about what they're going to do every single week. Do they prioritize their games like in Europa League, or do they go for the Premier League? But coming up, I think they have the likes of Southampton, Newcastle, Villa, 3 teams who all around them in the league right now. So that's just huge for them, and huge month coming up to see where they are. Obviously, they can go to Man City and win, but can they beat the teams around them is another question.
Yeah, very good point. And City, do you think that that's the title wrapped up? I mean, Guardiola said in his book, titles can be won in the last 8 games, but also lost in the first 8 games. I think that's the quote.
Yeah, no, I honestly do still think it's too early. I'm gonna keep saying it. Only 8 games in, and there's still plenty to play for. Obviously the Champions League, and a couple of injuries here and there for Liverpool, like Van Dijk. Salah took a knock, bad challenge against Leicester, so he could be out. Mane's been crucial. If we miss him, then yeah, that would be massive. Obviously you've seen what injuries have done to City, so who's to say it won't happen to Liverpool again, or like in a similar way? But City just really poor at the back, conceding goals that they should not be conceding at all. But I really do blame Pep for that. He's the likes of, tell me why he signed, João Cancelo when he has Kyle Walker, why he signs Rodri when he had Fernandinho, who was, I'm gonna say honestly, one of the best, if not the best, central defensive mid in Europe last season. He was outstanding, and he just showed how he missed a few games for them against, I think it was Palace or Leicester last season, and they lost them both, or they drew in one of them at least anyway. And now he's back and playing in centre half because of the injuries to Laporte and Stones. So I think that's huge, the recruitment. And if they go and buy another centre half in January, it's just going to be laughable, to be honest. But I think John Stones is coming back after the international break, but Laporte is just a massive, massive miss for them.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. It's definitely too early to call it. Um, Given that Liverpool will have the Club World Cup, the Champions League, the FA Cup and Carabao Cup, should they stay in it. Likewise with the Champions League. But I think that congestion around December, January, February, where you have the FA Cup start to begin for the bigger teams, and if you're still in the Carabao Cup, you have an influx of games there. Plus, you have to go to the Club World Cup for 2 weeks, get ready for the Champions League in February, and you still have a huge amount of Premier League games in that 2-3 month period. So I think come the start of February, we'll know where Liverpool sit, given that Van Dijk and Mane are the two important catalysts for Liverpool's success at the moment. I think you can get away with not having Salah. I mean, you very well know my opinions on Salah. I think you almost might even be better without him, but that's irrelevant. Firmino would be a big loss, but I think the work that Mane does back and forward, and just the energy, there's just the will to win that he brings. And Van Dijk is just a leader of men. Those two would be huge losses, similar to Laporte or a Kevin De Bruyne, or you could go on with City because they have far too many players, but particularly for Liverpool, those two are huge. And that fixture congestion around December, January, February will be a telling factor in whether Liverpool keep this distance between City and maybe even extend it, or if City start to reel them in as the fatigue of travelling and fixture congestion catches up with them.
Yeah, 100%. It's a long, long season, especially if you stay in all these competitions, and yeah, especially with injuries kicking in. Obviously, City have already lost big players, and they've even lost De Bruyne at times this season. So long, long way to go, and I do think it's anyone but Liverpool fans who think the league's over right now. So I think they're just fearing the worst. But yeah, it's far too early to tell, and City will definitely push. And who's to say Arsenal, Leicester, Chelsea can't push them as well?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe as we move on to the next game, maybe if Chelsea continue this rich vein of form, maybe Chelsea could pull something a rabbit out of the hat. I mean, I don't like Lampard tactically, but he's doing, or at least I didn't last season, but he's doing a really good job. I'll admit that so far it looks like that I could be wrong, and that's fine because a whole bunch of young English talent is just flourishing at Chelsea, and I think the club as a whole is really embracing that. And you can tell. I mean, 4-1 again. Again, it's Southampton. They haven't had the best start to the season, but Chelsea, I reckon, if they weren't, if they didn't have the young English talents doing so well, I reckon they go on to lose a game like this. But Abraham, Mount, Hudson Odoi, they're just killing it, and 4-1 away from home against any Premier League side. You got to take notice of that, and they're really starting to turn a corner, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And first and foremost, they're the third highest scorers in the league already, and they showed that again by scoring 4 at Southampton, as you say. And Mount and Abraham both on the score sheet again, which is just, it's great to see. And they are really two top talented players. And Tammy Abraham now top of the goal scoring charts with Aguero, I think, for this season. So that's obviously a huge boost. But as I say, third top goal scorers, I think they're almost third or fourth top for conceding in the league, in the entire league this season, which is not good. They're up there with goals conceded. With the likes of Newcastle and even Southampton, and then it's just Norwich and Watford below them, I think, which is two teams you don't want to be associated with this season, for conceding goals. So that obviously needs to be stamped out. How they do that, I'm not too sure, because I don't have all that confidence in Tomori at the back, in Zuma, even in Christensen. I honestly think Rudiger is their only quality centre half, for a Premier League side, to be honest with you, especially in the top four. If you look at, Van Dijk, Laporte, Matip, the players they have, Liverpool and City. So if Chelsea are going to challenge, then I think that needs to be fixed, really.
Yeah, I think, as you said quite rightly, the defense is a bit lacking at the moment. Also, I think Lampard is still trying to figure out what to do with Jorginho. I think he's trying to cover his frailties up by having Kante alongside him. And I mean, what a player to have alongside him to cover up frailties. But at the end of the day, Kante can't do everything, even though he probably can. But regardless, he can't, cover for everyone. And I think Lampard is grappling what to do with a player that came from the former regime. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, Kante obviously massive for them, and I think Jorginho's coming good. So it's just a matter of fact of getting them all together. Continue to win and continue scoring goals. If they keep on scoring goals, they won't worry about conceding. Um, but I think their bench, at the weekend just proved how much they've come along. They had the likes of Kovacic, Pulisic, Batshuayi, Barkley, all on the bench. And a couple of them came on, and did a good job. Scored, obviously, Batshuayi, Pulisic assist. And even if I go back to the defence, I think they have Aspilicueta in there, obviously a captain, leader, who could even, be pushed into centre half again, like he was in the past. Young Reece James on the bench, he's more than capable of filling in at right back. So I think the options are there for Lampard. It's just, as a manager, how he sorts that team out.
yeah, putting it all together.
Yeah, yeah.
And probably the biggest game of the weekend and the last game, not because of necessarily the two teams playing were massive teams, but because of the implications that it has for Manchester United. Newcastle took another scalp. I think they beat Tottenham 1-0 a few weeks back. And now they've beaten United a few weeks. They beat United 1-0, and Longstaff with almost had one cracker before he scored, but an absolute perler of a shot that skidded along the ground, blindsided De Gea, and the debutant wheeled away in celebration with his big bro.
Yeah, the game was definitely all about him. I mean, what a moment. 19 years old, front of the Gallowgate end in Newcastle against Man United, one of the biggest teams in the world. And he's done that in his Premier League debut. But I think you just got to move on to Man United and how worrying it is for them. The stats, I honestly don't know where to start. Winless on the road in 11 games, 12th in the Premier League, and it's now their worst start to a season in 30 years. So, not a good time to be a Man United fan.
Well, they're probably all Man City fans now, so
Yeah, you could be right, but worrying times. You look at the team they put out there, and I don't know why, but I always compare it to like, maybe 5-10 years ago when it was Ferdinand and Vidic. It was Evra, Neville, Scholes, yeah, but the list goes on. Rooney, Van Persie, and now you look, it's Rashford, it's Twanzebe, Maguire, Young, Dallo, McTominay, Fred. I mean, you just cannot compare the teams at all.
Well, on that point, you look at the United starting 11 against Newcastle and you say one, maybe two or three would start in a United of Glory Days team, or in a Liverpool or City at the moment. And that one is De Gea. He's the only one
Mm-hmm.
that's good enough to just slot into any team and hold his own and excel. Then you probably have Maguire, McTominay, and Rashford. Maybe Maguire sneaks in to like a City or Liverpool, alongside Van Dijk or Laporte or something. Maybe. McTominay is probably your youngster you're bringing off the bench to inject some run and some energy into the side. He's good. He's good enough to start, but you're building him towards the future, introducing him into the team, into the system, and you probably wouldn't. You'd probably be starting him against, FA Cup opposition or something like that, and building him into the starting 11. And probably the same for Rashford. You bring him on as an impact sub. You have your Van Persie starting, and then swap him over for a Rashford at the 60th minute, and just say, "Go chase the ball, big fella." And the rest, you just say, "What are you doing here?" I mean, no disrespect to them. Ashley Young should be playing Championship or Div 1 at League 1 at best at the moment. Um, Also, I forgot about Daniel James, who's had a superb start to the season, but I'd also put into that same bracket. Should not be starting yet. Should be worked his way into the team, worked his way into the system, and build him up for the future as a future star of the team. But to have all these future stars potentially in the starting 11 is just alongside players that don't deserve to be in a Manchester United shirt, or at least not yet. Just you don't know where they're going to fix it. At least if they had this, let's say they had the starting 11 of 10 years ago, and they're just plagued by injuries, and all of a sudden you have to put this team out. You say, you know what, it's fine. They'll be there at the end of the season. They'll get back, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 players back from injury or suspension or whatever. It's fine. It's a blip in the season. You look at it and you say, who do they add to the team? Martial, Pogba, Matic? I mean, I'm already running out of names to think of at the moment. I mean, Lindelof, he's not a world class defender or anything. You just maybe Luke Shaw, but even then, not world class. Great player, but not world class. Where do you go from here? And Solskjaer just seems like he's aged 5 years since he took the job, and he just looks like he's running out of ideas, and he's realizing that the job's too big for him.
Yeah, 100%. It's just not the United we're used to seeing. They used to go to teams like Newcastle and just completely overrun them, and that just did not happen at all. Um, it's worrying times, and you're absolutely right. These players, would never start for a Man United side, like I said in the past. Yeah, bar maybe De Gea, but that's they were just so bad against Newcastle, and they've just been below average for most of the season. Obviously, it started so well. What, they beat Chelsea 4-0, was it? And it just looked like, oh, they were back. This is it. It's Solskjaer is going to be a great manager, but he's having an absolute nightmare right now. And to be fair to him, he's tried to stay positive. He's done well, dealt with the media well, dealt with everything very well and calmly, maturely. But it's just absolutely atrocious right now for Man United, to be honest. And it's just not what we're used to seeing from them. But I think, yeah, a hugely important thing from you is just they're not worthy of wearing the shirt at all. And it is the likes of Scott McTominay, who's the only one who seems to be, and Daniel James, and they're maybe late teens, early 20s, and they're the players who are outshining the likes of Pogba, even Mata, who just hasn't been up to it. Ashley Young, who's meant to be their captain. So it's not looking good for them, but they need to bounce back as soon as possible.
Yeah, 100%. And I imagine they'll spend big. And I think we said at the start of the season, and as you quite rightly pointed, we thought they were all back, and I thought they had found their identity again as a quick attacking team. And I'm not saying that that's not them. I mean, they don't really have the players on the park to be that team anymore. But I think Lukaku leaving and Sanchez leaving, and I think they'll have a few other exits. I think Ashley Young and stuff will get moved on, and I wouldn't be surprised if Solskjaer stays on for the rest of the season, given assuming that they don't continue this horrid run of winlessness. And I think they'll spend big again, maybe in January, maybe in next summer on players that Solskjaer wants that fits his counter attacking style. So it'll be interesting to see who they target. It'd be kind of funny if Zaha ended up back at United. Um, but yeah, I guess I wouldn't be surprised if Zaha ended up there, or I'm just trying to think of players off the top of my head that could go. Yeah, I'm not too sure off the top of my head. I'd have to think about it and get back to you. But yeah, worrying times for United. No Champions League football again. They're no longer the far out ahead in terms of being the richest club in England. I think Liverpool and City are slowly catching up, or quickly catching up actually. So their financial power and their global power, I guess, is waning with their lack of success, and they'll impact their transfers and their influence as a club as a whole going forward.
Yeah, I've said it before. Liverpool went through what, maybe 20, 25 years of just being a nothing club, and unfortunately, it's been for most of my life. Not seeing them win titles. Luckily a Champions League here or there, but I mean, I can't believe I'm saying it, but United might be heading into that right now. They're 12th in the league. I can't remember them ever being 12th in the league. It's always top four. They're always been that side, and yeah, recent years it's been Europa League, and now it's Europa League again, obviously, and they're traveling away to the likes of Astana, teams like that, AZ Alkmaar. It's not the United we're used to seeing. So not a good time for them, but it'll just sum them up whether they can turn it around pretty rapidly, as you mentioned. Yeah, I think they will definitely go into the January transfer window and try and sort it out a bit more there. But as you say, and it's hard to get a big enough player anyway in January. But the main ones are going to be tempted to go to City, to Liverpool. Absolutely not United at the minute. No matter what you say, no matter how big the club is, why would you go to a team sitting in 12th in the Europa League when you could go to a team sitting top of the league in the Champions League? So it's going to be tough for them to try and persuade players to come in, but they're going to need to do it pretty fast.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic where you'd think that you could pick off players from like PSG or something, but those players are going to move on to Real Madrid or City, or another Champions League team that they deem closer to a Champions League than maybe a PSG, or a team like that. And players on the out of like a Real Madrid, or Isco if he was on the out, or Rakitic, or any of those players are going to just end up going to teams like PSG and earning a butt ton of money. So there's no real market for players going to United, if you want to phrase it like that. And if there is, then you're going to have to pay overs, kind of like Arsenal did with Pepe. And Pepe is probably worth 40 mil, maybe at most 40, 50 mil. To pay 70 mil, I mean, for 70 mil, you almost got Pogba a few years ago. And granted, he was at the peak back then, but, you know, you're just going to have to pay overs. And, the next generation of English talent like Jadon Sancho, why would you go to United when when you could replace Salah or Mane at Liverpool, or a Sane or Sterling or Mahrez, Bernardo Silva at City. It just, yeah, I think they're slowly losing their market power or appeal with this poor run of form, and uh, I'm fascinated to see who they pick up in January and for how much, because they may well pick up a Jadon Sancho-esque signing, but have to pay like 150 million just to pry him away from Dortmund, because they know that United are desperate.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think that's the way the market's going. You're going to have to fork out massive sums of money, especially in January. It's completely different to the summer transfer window, but how they go about it, I'm not too sure. But they need to do something pretty quickly to turn it around.
Mm. And we'll quickly go over the main Champions League games, if that's all right with you.
Mm-hmm.
We'll start with Madrid, Bruges, and Madrid have. Well, this is going back to Zinedine Zidane. They've spent all this money on new talent, but it's the old guard, and they're still struggling. I think I've said to you many times, I don't think Zidane is tactically capable of leading a super club like Real Madrid. And it proves by being 2-0 down at home at halftime in the Champions League to Bruges, and scraping a 2-2 win.
Yeah, I actually watched the game and it was unbelievable. It was ridiculous, how open lackluster Madrid were, at home as well in the Bernabeu. It's just unthinkable. Obviously, they are completely dominant in possession and shots and in passes, everything. But 2-2 at home to Bruges is not a result they wanted.
And I think it goes kind of back to what we were saying about Tottenham. Um, Stability is great, but you also need an influx of new ideas and new talent, and winning. As we said, Tottenham haven't won anything, but the saying goes, winning creates a stale environment, or something along those lines. At some point, winning doesn't motivate you anymore because you've already won everything. And Real Madrid three times in a row, or 3 times in a row, they won the Champions League. I mean, most of those players have won everything. Modric is a Ballon d'Or winner. I mean, Ramos is a World Cup winner. Half of their team are World Cup winners. So, I think they need an influx of new talent and new players to just give them that drive to win. And I think the same is also happening to Barcelona. And that's another topic for maybe if we cover Barca Inter. But Madrid, I think they need to start getting the likes of Hazard, Jovic, Rodrigo, Vitinhas Jr., just those types of players to inject something new, something different, and a new will to win. Because the old guard have already won everything, and I think it just kind of reeks of stale at the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to know what's going on because they're sitting top of the league. Um, but obviously in Europe they're not doing as well. So Zidane's obviously under a lot of pressure. But for me, it's just a beautiful game. All the money in the world, and you draw at someone like Bruges, who give all the fight, just like Man City, who lost to Wolves. Obviously, all the talent, all the money in the world, and you still come up short. So it's good to see for me.
And we sort of touched on the 7-2 game from Bayern Munich against and Spurs. So there's not really too much to go on, but I mean, do you reckon this is sort of the potentially beginning of the end of Spurs in the Champions League?
Again, early to say, but they obviously haven't had the best of starts. 2-2 at Olympiacos, throwing away a 2-goal lead, and it might have been that stage they were. I think it was 2-1 down, even at home to Bayern, and there was definitely 100% for me still in the game, and in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, half an hour, it just completely opened up, and it was all about Serge Gnabry, who just completely lit it up, and it was just fantastic to watch, really.
Tottenham are lucky because they have a relatively easier group, and Olympiacos lost to Crvena Zvezda. I apologize, but so
Red Star, easier to say.
yeah, so if they end up beating Red Star home and away, then that puts them in a really good position to make it to the next round.
Mm-hmm.
The big game from day 2 was Barcelona Inter, and I mean the Luis Suarez show popped up with an unbelievable volley from just inside the box or just outside the box. I mean, I don't even know. I was just so encapsulated by the volley, but I mean, Inter, they probably would feel disappointed that they didn't come away with 3 points, and Barca feel like they potentially dodged a bullet there.
Yeah, huge result for Barca. Inter, it's not been their best week. They were unbeaten in the league and going well, and now they've lost to 2-1 to Barca and 2-1 to Juve actually in Serie A. So they'll be disappointed. But I mean, I think Suarez, it was huge for him. 2 goals, 2 good goals, and I think maybe a wee bit of a warning shot to Griezmann, just to say that he's absolutely nowhere near finished yet.
Yeah, I think Barca learned the hard way that Suarez and Griezmann don't work, and I think Valverde should have learnt from Coutinho that you can't just put a talented player on the left and expect them to be Barcelona capable. I think Griezmann is Barcelona capable, Coutinho is Barcelona capable, but in their positions. And I think Griezmann, when he played centre forward for Barca, excelled, scored 2 goals. Likewise, if Coutinho was played through the middle, he would have excelled at Barcelona as well. But you play them out of position, and I mean, you shouldn't be surprised if they come up with absolute stinkers. And Griezmann Suarez, I don't think works, but I also think that maybe Griezmann is Suarez's successor, and wouldn't be surprised if Suarez gets moved on. Just a sneaky feeling. I think Suarez is probably in his last season at Barca. Again, just a sneaky suspicion, but I also think that Barca's kind of going through a mini transition year. I mean, if you look at their midfield, De Jong, Busquets, Artur, and defense, Roberto, Piqué, Lenglet, Semedo, and Ter Stegen obviously took over from Valdez. So there's a lot of new names in there, like Lenglet probably came to prominence last season. Semedo, same. Frankie de Jong's a new signing. Artur came to prominence last season. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's a mini rebuild, if you want to call it that, with Messi, Dembele's, and Griezmann up top as the front three, midfield three. I just said, and I wouldn't be surprised if they invested it or brought up a La Masia centre back and bit of a rebuild.
Yeah, I think you could be right. It's obviously an important season in a game for them. To try and get back some Champions League glory. It's been away for a few years now, but how that pans out with all those attacking players, as you mentioned, they've still got Dembele there. Obviously, Griezmann coming in. It's going to be interesting to see who they favour come the end of the season.
I don't think, just a little bit off topic, I don't think Valverde will last the end of the season. He's just not a Barcelona coach. He's sort of chipped away at the Barcelona identity in terms of game style, where it was very clear, patient build up that very. Well, I suppose the only way to describe it is Barca-esque. You kind of know how Barca are going to play. It's kind of chipped away at that identity. So I think along with new players, the old guard are struggling with their new, like a identity crisis, if you will, just a change of what they're used to. And Messi, for instance, would have been brought up in the same system since he was 13, same with Piqué and a whole bunch of other players. So I think there's this real dichotomy in the team that Valverde has created. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he gets the sack and maybe they go after an under fire Pochettino or maybe poach, I don't know, like a Bielsa or something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to wait and see, but I think it's, again, early days to really put a manager under pressure like that. But if the board aren't happy with the way they're going about it, then fair enough.
And we're going into the international week, which is pretty boring for at least me because I have no interest in any of them living in Australia. But looking forward to next week's um, Premier League and just quickly see if there's any. Can you think off the top of your head if there's any big games?
Obviously it's still a bit away yet, but yeah, United Liverpool on Sunday is going to be massive as always.
Yep, that'll probably be big.
Yeah, that's the one. Stand out.
So United are at home, and also Everton, West Ham as well. Quickly get your score predictions for Everton, West Ham, and United, Liverpool.
I mean, where do you go with West Ham at the minute? But even bigger question is Everton. Obviously they've been tough to beat away from or at home recently. Well, in 2019, I think. But obviously they haven't been doing so well this season. But I just think there'll be a few goals in it, so I'll say 2 each. I can't really separate them.
2 each?
Yeah, I'll go 2 all.
Damn, that was my prediction as well.
Well, there we go. I'm very rarely right about these things, so we'll have to wait and see. But I mean, United Liverpool, obviously the main one. There's definitely goals in that Liverpool attacking trio and against a United defence. But again, I think form goes out the window, as they say. I think it's true whenever it's a derby like this. Two of the biggest clubs in England and world football as well. But I can see Liverpool winning it. But I don't think it'll be that comfortable at all. But I think if Alisson's back for Liverpool, which he might be, then yeah, I can see him being absolutely massive for the Reds. So I'm gonna go, 2-0 Liverpool.
I'm going to go 4-1 Liverpool. I think United will be valiant in the first 20 minutes and then Solskjaer will lose his job in the last 70 minutes.
That could happen. It's happened before with United managers against Liverpool, so who knows?
Loss, draw, loss is United's last 5 games, and if they lose badly to Liverpool, I mean, stranger things have happened in football, but that could be it for Solskjaer.
Yeah, that could be him gone. We never know, but I've heard a few people saying that already, yeah. So let's wait and see.
Let's wait and see. Wise words. Well, it was a pleasure to talk all things football with you for another week. I mean, it's probably one of my favorite parts of the week. So thanks for coming on the show, and I can wait for the international week, but I can't wait for the United Liverpool game and getting to chat with you in 2 more weeks.
Yeah, pleasure as always, mate. Thanks for having me, and I'll be away enjoying Netherlands v Northern Ireland tomorrow night, and then obviously Liverpool United after that. So it's gonna be a good one for me. Sorry, it's not the same for you.
It's all right. I think the A-League is starting, so there'll be another season of a league I have no interest in.
Fair enough. I'll see you then.
Catch you, bro.
Got much help. Oh, he doesn't need any help. How about that?
This is the world of sport.